The wait is over when we're finally hopping back into game. Ladies and gentlemen, spawning up here on the top right hand corner of the map, we have the red Protoss player playing from Korea and currently teamless. Give it up for State. And his opponent spawning down here in the bottom right hand corner of the map, playing from America. It's the yellow Zerg player on Root Gaming, PandaBearMe. Definitely one of the more recent members for Root Gaming, it would seem. Low ground gateway expansion, pretty common to see these days. It was definitely less common in the past, but pretty much every Protoss player these days seems to be going for these low ground expansions, just because you can get that wall off up very, very quickly, deal with all kinds of early Ling floods and Ling harassment, etc. But PandaBearMe not doing anything super out of the ordinary, going for the hatched gas pool, is really just looking to play this out. It seems like in a more ordinary setting. Of course, Frost is one of those maps where you do have a bit of options in terms of where you take your third expansion. With the location that these two players end up spawning, generally I imagine State will be taking that further back one, and it's really almost kind of a role reversal from Heart of the Swarm, where I end up seeing some Zerg players say, I'm gonna get hyper aggressive on you, I'm gonna take the forward third expansion. And some Zerg players say, I'm going to play a little bit more passive. I maybe want to get up to lurkers or something very quickly. I'm going to take the further back third expansion. And it really does sort of come down to the playstyle and the preference that these two players go for. And I'm always really curious if Protoss players try and read into that. But man, this is a big fake out. I don't know if it's going to get to a third expansion. PandaBearMe does see that the natural expansion is extraordinarily late right now. You can see there's 2 gateways and a cyber core and 2 adepts all finished up, and even a Twilight Council gets started before a natural expansion gets thrown down, and he doesn't even have close to enough minerals to save up for that. What must PandaBearMe be thinking? PandaBearMe is still going for a third expansion. Looks like down over here on the safer side, but these adepts are going to be coming on in, and it seems like this is likely going to be a big resonating glaives all in from State off of one base. I imagine he's probably going to be throwing down an additional gateway or 2 pretty soon. The Twilight Council is going to be able to research Resonating Glaives, and these Adepts should be able to get some nice damage done. There's just purely Zerglings being made right now. Zerglin speed will be finishing up, but is PandaBearMe underestimating this? He is starting to drone up a little bit more, but this Nexus is very, very late. Chrono Boost has continuously, throughout this entire game, been put on this Cybernex core, and the Zerglings didn't make their way up into the main base. Did PandaBearMe see the Twilight Council? And he makes it out of there with one of the Zerglings. He did end up spawning out the Twilight Council, so he's gotta know. He must know what an all-in this is. And is he just going to say, like, I'll throw down some spine crawlers, I'll get out fast roaches? I mean, I don't think he has enough time to get out roaches anymore, because guess what? Resident Glaze has already started up. It's going to be done in about a minute. Warp Gate technology is finished up, so these gateways are going to be warping in some of those adepts pretty soon. But there's only 2 warp gates. That's sort of the surprising thing over here. 3rd gateway is finally thrown down. Forge is thrown down. And this is just such a weird build from State. He's still making now, I guess, 1 probe at a time, but he must have cut some workers, because we're at the 4-minute mark and he only has 26 workers. That is a very, very low number of workers for if you were continuously making them. I'm just struggling to figure out what State's plan was over here, because he's not even moving out right now. Resonating Glaze is getting close to finishing up. Is he just going to try and hit off of 3 gateways and get up +1, maybe take a 3rd to try and play catch up? I don't know how much I like that. This must just be some kind of really strange timing that I am just not familiar with, but I feel like with the Roach Warren now going up, State is still not moving out just yet. He's warping in more of these Adepts, but I feel like by the time these Adepts make their way over to the natural expansion of the 3rd expansion of PandaBearMe, PandaBearMe will have his Roaches out. His Roach Warren's already more than halfway done. There's still no 3rd expansion coming out. Adepts are finally shading out across the map to try and put on some pressure, but PandaBearMe is so hyper aware of the fact that there is no 3rd. Well, it looks like one of the overlords does get picked off by a Stalker, but I believe that PandaBearMe probably is also aware of the fact that these gas gases were not really taken. So he also knows that there's not going to be just some fast DT tech or something else weird like that coming out. We do have a proxy pylon over here, but it's not even a proxy pylon with a gateway for that additional warp in potential. or even just faster warp-ins. It's just a one pylon. Those slow warp-ins. Adepts try and come in over here, and it's mostly just Zerglings right now, but here come all the Roaches. 3, 5, we have 2 more on the way. We're gonna be up to 7 Roaches pretty soon. Even getting an Overseer up saying, well, I know you had a Twilight Council, but where is the scariness of your push? And I just don't see it yet. Stays continuing to produce 2 workers at a time at least, so he is up to 43 workers versus 63. It's not as bad of a position as he was before, but Adepts do get cut off. He's going to end up losing a couple of them as he tries to shade them away over toward the natural expansion. Does manage to do so, but these are Zerglings on creep with speed, and the Roaches are also popping up back at home, so yes, the Resonating Glaives is going to be helpful for dealing damage as quickly as possible if he focus fires down drones, but can he really get enough to equalize? We're sitting up at 63 drones earlier. We're down to 54, so he's done at least 10 workers worth of damage, but this was, again, like an all-in from State. And he has to back out. He just didn't do the damage I think he needed to. PandaBearMe is still on a reasonable-ish number of workers. Probably wants to clean up this gateway and the pylon over here that the gateway was recently warped in. If he realizes that it came from that angle. I feel like seeing all the Adepts come in from the high ground when you know your opponent's spawned in the top right, that should probably be setting some alarm bells off, but a couple Zerglings pick off the probe. Looks like he still managed to get up the Nexus, but for how long? I don't know how you defend that Nexus. Lair Tech is also finished up, I believe. Hydralisk Den is finished up. Blink is trying to be researched. We have a Robo coming down very, very late on into the game. Only 4 warp gates out as well, so we can't even rely on massive numbers of gateway units. I really do feel like if there's a big push out from PandaBearMe, get 1 or 2 of these Ravagers out just to knock down any potential force fields or try and harass the Mothership Core if it tries to get into the too good of a position. You just push out across the map. With more of these Hydros coming out, how in the world does State defend his 3rd expansion and his natural expansion at the same time? I don't think that he can defend both of them. And this is the thing about Frost. You can get right up over here. You move up this ramp. You're in between the natural and the 3rd. Your opponent suddenly has to deal with both of them. Adepts are going to be shading around, trying to do some counter harassment, maybe trying to pull PandaBearMe back. That might be one of the saving graces of how he could potentially defend this, but PandaBearMe is pulling back his entire army. State is doing a great job of buying time. Is it going to be enough? I'm still not sure. I think he still has to do a lot more over here. Spore Crawler is also going up, maybe to deal with potential DT tech transition, as I was mentioning before. With the Spore Crawler again, focus firing down. That's very cute. I wonder if he is going to go for any type of Dark Templar tech later on now. Well, for now, it's going to be just a robotics bay, as well as a robotics facility. Second one being added on right now, so gonna be able to pump out double immortal production. Can State really catch up over here? He's got +2 weapons finished up versus just +1 weapons. The melee attacks right now for PandaBearMe, who's sitting on a mostly Roach Ravager Hydralisk army, aren't really gonna be benefiting from that upgrade at all. Some amazing force fields, the most miraculous photon overcharges, an overcommitment from PandaBearMe. It's not unheard of, but it is going to be asking for quite a bit. Disruptor number 1 is on its way out, as well as Disruptor number 2. 3rd expansion is being evacuated over here as he knows that he's going to have a very difficult time defending this without those Disruptors. Only ends up losing a couple of the workers, though. He doesn't want to lose the 3rd, though, and I don't think there's anything he can do to save it, unfortunately. Looks a couple of the Adepts do make their way back in over here and try and get some damage done. Find an opportunity over the 3rd expansion instead, where not many drones are really mining, but the 4th expansion is where the drones are. Disruptor shot does go off, and it's a pretty good one. Photon Overcharge is also going to push that army back. State is, he's not losing, but losing that 3rd was so difficult for him, and he's doing damage, but it's just, is it enough? I don't think so just yet. But I'm not going to count him out. I am not going to count State out, because Disruptors are the biggest playmakers in all of StarCraft. In an instant, they can decimate an Zerg army that is just a little bit too far out of position. Is not well split up enough, and we have some Stalkers trying to engage, as a lot of the Hydros are trying to turn into Lurkers. And the Disruptor count has been maintaining steady. I don't think he's lost any Disruptors. No, hasn't lost any. Has a 3rd one coming out right now, so it doesn't have a hefty number by any means. Looks like the pylon and the gateway are going to get taken out as well. And PandaBearMe is going to be losing quite a few of these units. Oh, killing some of his own units with that. Also takes some losses to the Disruptor shot. He's just trying to get the best trades he can, and State may just want to try and utilize that blink that he had researched earlier on to make sure he doesn't take any substantial losses. Blinks forward to take out the remainder of these units. Is going to be doing a nice job over there, but now he has to worry about the Lurker Tech. Lurker Tech is out, as there it is, it's finished up. We saw some trying to morph in earlier. I don't think he has any out just yet. Only has 5 Hydros with his army right now, as he is going to be turning all of them into Lurkers. But this has definitely bought State enough time to try and, oh, okay, I guess he's only just now reestablishing that third. Is there a window of opportunity over here for State to just do the big push out? He is going for it. He's going to catch the Lurkers before they morph in, and even if they do finish, the Disruptors can absolutely tear through them. All the Lurkers get canceled. No Lurkers going to be available. The Zergling's doing a lot of damage, though. There's no Adepts, there's no Zealots in the mix over here to decimate the Zergling count, which, by the way, don't have any carapace upgrades, and these are +2 weapon Zerglings. They are chewing through these Stalkers in absolutely no time. Disruptors are starting to fall. I think that this might have been a little bit too much. The hope was there. There was some sort of idea that somehow State would be able to bring this back, but I mean, maybe if it had some Zealots out, he would have been able to make something happen, but no. Now losing all of the Stalkers, I just don't know how it works. He loses all the Disruptors. Adepts are out in pretty high numbers, so yeah, Resonating Glaze and +2 weapons, that's all well and good, but Lurkers are the big problem. There's no Stargate, there's no observers out on the map right now. Well, I guess there's 2 observers out on the map right now, and they are over the army. Maybe he can make something happen over here, but just there's so many Lurkers. These Lurkers would have to be traveling in a clump like this. The Disruptor shots will all have to go off on these Lurkers. I mean, these are the kind of trades he needs. He needs like 2 or 3 more of those. And he needs to do it without losing his third. I don't know if that's possible. But State is still around in the game, so some level of him believes it's a possibility. He's not going to give up just yet. Lurkers are doing a really nice job splitting up, though. Time Warp goes down to try and slow things down. Mothership does get picked off, and the Hydros are going to get taken out as well as some of those Lurkers, but I think the third expansion is going to be forfeit. A lot of the workers also going down. 30 workers left over for State. This might be too much. This just may be a little bit too much as the Disruptors are starting to get taken out. PandaBearMe is not making any more mistakes, and he takes the game over his opponent. 1-0. Spawn down here in the bottom right-hand corner of the map, we have the red Protoss player. Currently sitting down 0-1, but not in doom and gloom mode just yet. Give it up for State. And his opponent spawning down here in the bottom left-hand corner of the map, the yellow Zerg player from Root Gaming. It's PandaBearMe. PandaBearMe going for that natural expansion nice and quickly, not really worrying about any kind of early cheeses that he would be looking to throw out. And that's something I wonder if someone like State could make work, especially on these newer maps where you try and go for something like a proxy 3-gate or something like that. I know it can be successful, and I've watched PandaBearMe stream. He does lose to them every so often, when he does stream anyways. Although it's been a while since he streamed, so I won't put too much weight onto it, but maybe just mixing something in would be a good opportunity. It is a best of 5, not a best of 3, as correct the overlay. So, of course, that does give both these players an opportunity to try and do things a little bit out of the ordinary. One of the out of the ordinary things about this map that a lot of people are familiar with are these island bases where there are 2 openings, and these are air blockers. These red walls are air blockers. Overlords will have to path through the choke point or around them because they can't go through them. But drop off a probe over here. Maybe take an expansion. Maybe drop just morph in an overlord and take an expansion over there and make it difficult. Throw down some spore crawlers and make it hard for the war prism to make it in. There's a lot of things that I feel like could be done, especially for the Zerg player. I think that Protoss players will have a much harder time dealing with this if there's even just 1-2 spore crawlers. Now, boom, you have a safe expansion that you don't have to worry about defending. I think some people may argue with me on that, just because they'll say, well, the War Prism it has so much health, they'll walk straight over the Spore Crawler, but I don't know. I kind of feel like there's still a window of opportunity to make something happen over there. State in this game does get up the expansion much, much earlier, so we're not seeing a repeat of that last game. Does get a full wall off also fairly early on, with the 2 gateway opening. And also even lets a Zealot finish. That's very interesting. So oftentimes, if you're not familiar with it, it's very common, or it used to be very common, a little bit less common these days, to start up your early Zealot if you're not going to go for any kind of early scout across the map. And if you then, when you finally get a read on when your opponent threw down their spawning pool, if they're going to try and go for some kind of cheesy build, you decide and say, do I need the Zealot or not? Do I need to finish my wall in right now or not? And I think State saw that he didn't need to, but he lets the Zealot finish up anyways. It's still nice for later on. The Zealot can add in a little bit of extra DPS, especially if you're in a situation like that last game where you have +2 weapons versus +0 Carapace, and you're sitting on all Stalkers. That one Zealot will take out many, many a Zergling. Well, you got a fast Stargate coming out, and this, I think, is a more State-esque play. State is definitely one of those Korean quasi-Protoss players who he plays like a more like a Korean Protoss player, because he practices on the Korean server. That's where he plays most of his games. And very interestingly, he does not send those Adepts all the way across the map. Sends it back home, and even shades back up in the main base, almost as if these Adepts could attack the Overlord, but I don't know what he's really planning to do with it. It's almost like he's concerned about a potential for a Nidus Worm play, or something was about to come out. It really just doesn't feel safe moving across the map. I guess if you moved out across the map when Zergling's speed is finished up, there's a huge risk that you'll just end up losing your Adepts to a big Ling Flood, and you're gonna get a scout out from that Stargate Phoenix play very, very soon. So it's not of the utmost importance that you just send your Adepts out to get a scout. In fact, these Adepts are gonna come quite in handy, as he might lose the probe, but he's at least gonna be able to take out some of those Zerglings. Makes it a bit easier to defend your third, and your probe, your next probe for the 3rd expansion a little bit longer. Lair Tech comes up behind this for PandaBearMe. He has an Evolution Chamber getting up that +1 melee attacks again. So looking to go for a similar style as that last game. And I want to note something interesting about that last game was that he didn't go for the traditional Ling Bling Muta style that you'll oftentimes see from a Zerg player when they go for melee upgrades. He went for Roach Ravager, Hydra, and going into Lurkers. But he got the melee upgrades. So that's such a weird and different decision than most other Zerg players I end up seeing these days. I wonder if it's just this sort of thing that he's been playing around, where he says, well, so many players are just getting up a big Stalker Disruptor ball, and speed Zerglings with a lot of attack upgrades actually do quite well against it, because the Disruptors can't really deal with those Zerglings unless the Zerglings are not on top of their army, which oftentimes, if you're engaging versus a Zerg, the Zerglings are on top of your army. But Adepts are going to be shading on in. State seeing what damage it can get done over here. PandaBearMe still sitting on 64 drones, so still sitting in a very, very confident spot. And the Adepts have got to get more damage done, but mostly they've just been focusing fire down on a lot of these Zerglings. These Adepts also do not have resonating glaives, so he's starting to focus fire some more of these drones down. The Phoenix have also been continuing to do some harassment during the time that these Adepts have been maneuvering around, so ends up losing the last of his Adepts, but at least keeps the Phoenix alive and continue to harass and potentially try to supply block PandaBearMe, who is sitting pretty close to supply block right now. So 85 of 90 supply, no Overlords on the way, and is very close to losing an Overlord over here. Oh, State gonna go for the lift up, doesn't quite get it. He had enough energy for it, that's unfortunate. Just reacting a tad bit too late. But of course, 3rd expansion did go up quite safely for State, which is a huge difference from that last game. We're starting to see this go to more of a macro game. You got the traditional double Roboxley pumping out those Immortals for State. He's getting up that +1 weapons a lot later than that last game, but still getting them up nonetheless. And it's going to be quite useful. Switching Overcharge is going to be able to easily push back any sort of counter harassment forces. And the Phoenixes will seize total map control. I really also like the Phoenix because if there was an attempt at an expansion over here and one of these island bases, State would know immediately. State would probably know and be able to make like an Oracle or a Void Ray to kill the expansion before any sort of defenses were able to reasonably get over there. But all the Hydros are going to be pumping out pretty soon, so State is going to have to worry about that, as well as keep an eye on that Hydralis Den. You want to know when the Lurker Den is being made. You want to know when you need to start worrying about that next level of transition. Charge is nice, and of course, Immortals do okay-ish versus the Lurkers, but since the Immortals started taking, or the shields only took 100 damage versus 200 damage that they took before, I think that a lot of Protoss players feel less confident in just sticking around on pure Immortals. PandaBearMe, I've got to say, has been doing a nice job getting some of that creep spread up. It's not Scarlet levels of creep spread, you know, at the 8-minute mark where Scarlet has the creep spread all the way up here to the top right-hand corner. But it's still a pretty decent creep spread, and it's going to, for certainly, make State a bit more annoyed as he does the big push out. He's going to have to take out all these creep tumors, slow things down, potentially worry about waiting for the creep to actually recede before really pushing on forward, especially against units like Hydralisk or Speed Zerglings that can very easily get surrounded. And most Protoss players don't keep their army with their Mothership Core anymore. They use that Mothership Core to stay back at home and defend. But man, look at this army composition from State. We got pure Immortals, we got High Templars that are going to have Storm pretty soon, and we have a couple of Zealots that are going to have Charge, well, Charge is already finished up, but +1 and +2 weapons going to be finished up versus 0 Carapace upgrades for the Zerg player. This is a really scary looking composition. Even has a couple of the Phoenix in the air just to deal with potential Overseers that could be in the mix or anything along those lines that might try and snipe off those Observers. But a handful of these Zerglings are going to be easily dealt with by Charge Zealots. I mean, if +1 weapons wasn't enough, Charge acts as that +1 weapons and does that extra damage to two-shot them. But look at the big Link Flood. We also have the Lurker Den as well as the Infestation Pit going down over here for PandaBearMe. So PandaBearMe might start thinking about that transition point, but he's getting very close to max out. I think once that Lurker Den finishes up, he's going to be making a ton of these Lurkers. And yes, there is a very scary army composition over here for State, but he is very much going to be down in army supply by a little bit. And his army just looks smaller. It just is not an army that can easily split up, and if he's not in position immediately for the defense, I don't think he's going to have a good enough army to engage into an already sieged up PandaBearMe. Adepts do shade forward, and I love the pylon spread, because yeah, you're going to be losing these pylons, most certainly, but it is definitely going to help you be in position. He's even sacrificing some of these Zealots just to keep an eye on this army, and big storms going down, not just on the Lurkers, but on all the Zerglings that had +2 melee attacks for research. Oh my god! These storms are unbelievably good. The Hydralisk count is also absolutely decimated. Even the Lurker count is gone. In one solid swoop, State comes in, takes I think turning this around to a 20 supply lead, which was originally 10 supply or 15 supply down, is going to continue to charge across the map. High Tech is going up behind this, and PandaBearMe is just rapidly trying to produce as many units as possible, frantically trying to get up an army. A single Archon going to lead the charge and probably run into the remainder of the army, seeing, okay, that's what you have over here. He's going to try and take out a couple of Zerglings in the meanwhile before he gets taken out, but this Immortal count just makes me think that like whatever number of Lurkers are around, he's going to be relying on maybe sniping off that Observer or something along those lines. Charge Zealot's also soaking up a lot of those hits. Finally, the Immortal shields are starting to be popped. And the Lurkers are getting onto being just absolutely obliterated. The Phoenix is also lifting up the Lurkers. GG is called. State takes a magnificent engagement utilizing map vision and takes the game, tying up the series 1-1. That was the sickest of engagements. If I was a Zerg player, I would be like, that was disgusting. We need to do something about Protoss right now. But that was a Protoss player, and I'm a Protoss player, so I'm just like, those are beautiful, beautiful size storms. And again, look, it had to do with the fact that he had the pylon wall all around his bases. He had his Observers well controlled, making sure they weren't just like running straight into the fray. If there was an Overseer, just running straight into the Hydralisk. Using those Adepts to shade around and can constantly send around, saying, okay, your army's over there, I'm gonna send some Zealots around the top side. He sees with the Zealots that PandaBearMe is moving around over there. He says, okay, I'm gonna move my army over there. PandaBearMe tries to siege up, and he gets the burrow off, but not a lot else. Those Zerglings get absolutely obliterated. And this also brings me back to the Zerglings, because I mentioned before, the traditional composition you'll see from a lot of Zerg players who go into that Roach, Ravager, Hydralisk, Lurker composition is you'll be seeing ranged upgrades. Looks like they're remaking the lobby as I really quickly check that out. Getting a little bit confused. Alright, but yeah, we generally end up seeing the ranged upgrades for those Roaches and Ravagers, as well the Hydros and the Lurkers. But instead we see the melee upgrades, and we see a big flood of Zerglings. We definitely saw in that game, in that engagement, we saw the weakness of going for such a Zergling heavy composition. If you're ever at a choke point, those storms will just make your Zerglings disappear in a matter of seconds. So I wonder, is this a point where PandaBearMe says, maybe we'll try something a little bit different? Or is this one of these things where you have practiced and tried the style for an extended period of time on the ladder, well tested, and trying to do it and go into the range upgrades would be a big change that would somehow throw you off? I don't know. That's a really good question that I think only PandaBearMe is going to know the answer to, and even he may not know the answer until he tries something on this game. We're moving on to the map Frozen Temple. We'll see you guys there. Oh, I'm just eating up the salt in the chat right now about those storms. Man, people really don't like the fact that that engagement went so well thanks to those two storms. Spawning down here in the bottom right-hand corner of the map, we have the red Protoss player who definitely showed that, you know, engagement going super duper well as it did or not, I think that State was still in a great position in that last game. And he showed that he can contend with PandaBearMe. We'll see what he does in this game. Give it up for State, whose name I already said. And his opponent spawning up here in the top left-hand corner of the map, the player who I am more interested in this guy's decision making. Yellow Zerg player won game number 1, but lost game number 2 because of the style he's going for. Give it up for Root Gaming's PandaBearMe. And again, that question to me is, does he go for that similar melee attack upgrade style once again or not? It may not come into play. Once again, we see State going for what he did in game number 1. This is perplexing me. I hope that we actually see, you know what? This is not even me rooting for State because I have this bias. I love both of these players. Both of these guys are fantastic. Not only as players, but I also love them as individuals. They're super cool and awesome. But I want to see State win this game because I want to see what the hell this build is supposed to do. If he just stays on 2 gateways, Chrono Boosts out the 2 Adepts, but okay, this game he's Chrono Boosting out 1 Adept and 1 Stalker. So the Stalker is going to be nice because he can deny Overlord scouting for a little bit. He's going to use the probe over here, but he may just be faking the Nexus again, as yeah, he starts up 2 more Adepts. He may be throwing down the Twilight Council inside his main base. Is he going to throw up the Nexus? Is there just going to be a slightly later Nexus? If it's just a slightly later Nexus, it's not as big of a deal. Alright, yeah, it looks like this is just a bit of safer play, I would say, from State, where he's going to try and get a bit more aggressive, but it's not the same thing as game number 1, where he got out 2 gateways, Chrono Boosting out Warp Gate technology for a solid 2 minutes, getting out a Twilight Council, only taking 2 gas guys the entire game, and then finally getting up his Nexus. This is a very different style. It is similar in a lot of ways, and he is going to have to get some damage done, but it's a much more reasonable amount of damage. Killing off Larva, wow, that doesn't happen very often, which is 3 Adepts. But the Adepts should be able to shade over if they decide to let it finish, but opting not to as he sees all those Zerglings are out. Twilight Council is still going up behind this, and this isn't a huge surprise, but I do wonder, is he going to try and pop down a bunch more gateways, or is he going to try and grab a faster 3rd expansion? I really do feel like those are the 2 most likely things. Resonating Glaze is going to be Chrono Boosted out, and the Adepts are going to be shading back home. So have a nice defense, and Dark Shrine is coming out. Okay, this makes a little bit more sense. You get up the faster cybernetics core and gateways. You get a couple of these early game units to put some pressure on and force out early game units. And with your opponent making all these Zerglings earlier on than maybe they would generally like to because they have to deal with those Adepts, they probably also want to try and cut a few more corners later down the line in the form of Spore Crawlers. But Lair Tech is also coming up right now. So Lair Tech should be finished up in time for the Dark Shrine. Is there going to be an Overseer immediately made? Oftentimes a lot of Zerg players will go for those Overseers, especially if they don't get Overlord speed nice and early on. So they'll use the Overseer to get the nice scout out on exactly what their opponent is up to. And at that stage, you'll have detection for the Dark Templar. Third expansion looks like it also is going to be established pretty soon over here for State, so taking a nice and nicely timed third expansion. This does look like it's going to go into a macro game unless PandaBearMe has something else in mind. He is making a couple of roaches right now, not an overwhelming number, but he's only sitting on 47 workers. This may just be because he saw as many adepts as he did, and he wants to make sure he has units out in time to defend. It's very easy for these adepts to just shade halfway across the map in a matter of seconds, and you just say, well, you now have 15 to 20 seconds to react to me pushing out. I hope you're ready. So having a couple of those roaches out earlier on is helpful. Looks like the adepts are making their way across the map with those 2 Dark Templar in the mix. Overseer is being made because, you know what? He hasn't seen the Dark Shrine, but he knows that it's definitely a possibility for it to be there. And the adepts do end up canceling the shade, not quite finding the right opportunity to move in. Spore Crawler's going down already for PandaBearMe as well, so it looks like he did scout out the— oh my god, he's trying to go for the whole position on the Dark Templar. He almost gets it. That would have been really, really impressive. But doesn't quite get it, and State is able to escape on out of there. Can use these Dark Templar not only for a bit of map control, because the Overseers are not always joined in with all of the Zergans around the map, but he can also use it just for making some Archons later on. He's getting up Blink, he's getting up his robotic facility, and this is also starting up a very late third. I really did think he was going to throw down the third maybe a minute and a half to 2 minutes ago, but it looks like he used all of those resources on just these adept weapons, which the adepts finish up on top of these roaches, not quite able to get on top of the drones, and this really does force him to, I guess, commit to this, even though he's really not going to be able to get that much damage done. 4 adepts do finish and making their way into the main base. He scouts out the Hydralisk Den timing and sees that it's not turning into a Lurker Den, so he's a bit more time, but man, he is just not going to be able to get the damage done he needs to. Well, he does have these DTs getting slightly more damage done, but overall, at the end of the day, 5 workers killed for losing every single one of those adepts. Definitely not worth it by the slightest bit of imagination. But third expansion is getting focus fire down. DTs are getting focus fire down. The Spore Crawler does not provide enough detection, or he doesn't have enough units over there. He loses the third expansion, and with the third expansion of his own going up, could State actually turn this around? He loses all those adepts, and the drone count is still very much there for PandaBearMe. He's going to be able to immediately bounce back as soon as that third finishes up, or even just trying to take a fourth expansion behind this. But hey, you know what? State, if he can defend against a big counterattack, I think he's in a decent spot. Lurker Den is still not starting up, though, because he wants to finish researching the Muscular Augments upgrade. But PandaBearMe could set himself up for a nice spot where, yeah, he's kind of lost his third expansion. He's not sitting in the best economic position for the next minute or two, but he's still got 68 drones, and as soon as that Muscular Augments finish up, I feel like he can maybe make a push across the map, poke forward, see how much there is, and if there's not enough, if the State is playing a little bit too greedy, and I think he's playing okay-ish. He's got a couple of sentries with some good force fields, some good foot and overcharges. He could probably defend against a big push-in. But then he moves back, he waits for the Lurker Den to finish up, he gets out a couple of Lurkers, and then tries to go in for a push number 2. Now, State is going to have Disruptors in the mix for that second push-in if he decides to go for something like that. But with a good engagement, with a good split-up of your army, you can make it work. My concern here is that that last game, and even game number 1, the Disruptor shots for State were fantastic. In that last game, the Psionic Storms were fantastic, and PandaBearMe did not split up his army very well. So I wonder if that is really going to be a sound bit of logic for him. This game, he's going for the plus melee, plus 1 and plus 2 melee attacks once again, so he's sticking to the style that he has thought about. And I've got to say, moving through something like this choke point is not going to work well for him. Moving even through, I would say, this kind of angle of attack is not going to work well for him. What could work is if he has a lot of the Zerglings moving along this bottom south side, coming in, getting on top of High Templar or probes or anything around there. He splits up his roaches and Hydros at a different angle and tries to make attacks work on both sides and force State to split up his army and his attention with Disruptors, which are very, very attention-driven units. Then we could see something working out. Oh, losing a lot of these roaches. PandaBearMe probably not going to be too happy about that. He does pick off the pylon, and so there's just going to be an unpowered gateway over here, which unfortunately this 4 State does not provide any faster warp-ins. I guess he can make making a pylon is a lot easier. Or remaking a pylon is a lot easier and faster than remaking an entire gateway. But man, we got the big Zergling flip. This is what I was talking about. A lot of Photon Overcharge forced out. In fact, every Photon Overcharge forced out. The Mothership Core now sitting on 0 energy. These Zerglings are going to be able to move back in a little bit later on. But does he need those Zerglings to put this push in? Only time will tell. We're going to find out fairly soon. A lot of Disruptors in the mix, with 2 more going to be popping out and making their way across the map to join in the fray. Lurkers are getting burrowed, but they are very clumped up. Already seen 4 of the Disruptor, or just 4 of the Lurkers going down to the Disruptor shots. Zerglings in pretty decent numbers. I mean, Zerglings are a lot harder to kill with Disruptors than they are with Storm. With Storm, you can maybe get a little bit of damage done on your army, but it's okay. With Disruptor shot, if you're hitting your army, those units are dead. But this is the moment. I feel like PandaBearMe has got to do something if he wants to go for a big counterattack or something. This is the time to do it before the Mothership Core gets that energy, but looks like he maybe lost that window of opportunity. Even a couple of Adepts around over here, but forcing a Warp in back at home would also be nice, because these Zerglings, yeah, they're not doing anything right now. They're going to go after the Robotics. That's a really cute move. I am a big fan of this. Focus Fire down one of the Robotics facilities. Going to cut down the Disruptor production. He's going to be able to soften up the other one, but not going to be able to get it. He moves in with the rest of these Zerglings, but these Zerglings not going to be able to do a whole lot. They may just go after the Robotics facility instead, but here we go. A big engagement over here with a lot of these Zerglings that were retreating around. It looks like all those Lurkers and Hydros still sitting back, but it does pull State back, and State goes for a very interestingly forward position 3rd expansion. Oh man, a lot of these Zerglings going down. PandaBearMe, he can afford to lose some of them, but definitely not all of those. Definitely not that many. He's got a lot of his units in production right now. His army supply is not as big as it should be because he's still producing them. They're not made yet. And he's sitting down in army supply by about 10, so he really does need to buy a little bit more time. Looks like he's going to be able to get out a majority of the units. A lot more Zerglings being made. He's also taking a 5th expansion behind this. But I like this position for State because it allows him to use this army that is much more powerful on the defensive and say, I'm just going to keep my army around here. I'll have to use my Mothership Core to deal with Zergling counterattacks. That is going to be a big pain point for State. But if you can deal with any kind of attacks coming this way with the Disruptors and continue to very easily move into that 4th expansion, put the pressure on, he could be in a really, really nice spot. Greater Spire is coming out though, and that is going to completely change the tide of how this game has been going. Stalkers of the Blink, yeah, they can act as a sort of temporary solution to low numbers of Broodlords that aren't well supported on the ground. But with the Lurkers on the ground and Broodlords in the air, these Stalkers cannot blink forward because they will be blinking into Lurkers. They will just absolutely get devastated. And the Broodlords are going to be able to pick away at the Disruptors because the Broodlords can get as close to the Disruptors as they want, as long as these Stalkers are not close enough to pick them off. Looks like a couple of Zealots trying to focus fire down that new expansion. Not quite able to make it work, but does get it very, very low on health. And that expansion could very well go down fairly shortly, especially with the Broodlords going to be the option, as well as Lurkers. It's not going to be a very mobile army for PandaBearMe. So the way that these armies have been interacting with each other is going to completely change now. State has had this army that I would say is less mobile. It's been the Disruptor army and everything. He's been the solid force. That's why he took this forward expansion and everything. And PandaBearMe has been going for these Zergling counterattacks. But I think that with the Broodlords coming out and the Lurkers now in fairly high numbers, that's going to be changed. We're going to have to see State going for Zealot counterattacks over at this left-hand side base and trying to take out all these spine crawlers, dealing damage on multiple fronts and pulling a PandaBearMe back and buying time. But I mean, with the expansion that he took, it's just not going to work. He's just not going to be able to buy time. Look at this. The army is already here. It took less than 10 seconds to move across the map over to the 4th, and now suddenly he's going to be putting State under siege. Lurkers burrowing in well spread out positions over here, and you can see that even though good Disruptor shots are going off, the Broodlords are getting the damage done that they need to. They're slowing down this army. The Broodlords are taking out the expansion, taking out the gas geysers. Big blink backwards, and Storm is going to be nice over here to take out some of those Zerglings, but he needs to rely on these Disruptors to take out these Lurkers. A lot of observers in the mix, and they're so important to keep alive. He does end up losing one of them. Softens up the shields on another one as the Overseers are in the army. Big Storm's going down, and hey, State is starting to make some progress over here. He's starting to take out some of the Lurkers, and guess what? I think all the Overseers are in the further back. The Observers are going to get taken out over here, though, by the Corruptors. And that does mean that State not only losing the army fight over here with the Broodlords being winning out in the front line, the Lurkers are also starting to burrow forward. I think that State's going to have to sacrifice this base. He may need to just try and immediately try and take this base, buy himself a little bit of time. But I don't think he took the worst of trades at the beginning of that fight. I'm trying to make sense of this. He warps in a lot of high tempo right now. Storm are going to be very valuable in dealing with not just the Zerglings, but also those Broodlings when they start to get a little bit out of hand. Since there are oh god. Okay, well the wall-in is completely unwalled in. So now the Zerglings just stream into the main base. And this is going to hurt the production. This is going to hurt the tech. He's going to be able to take out the Temple Archives. That just might be the winning move alone. If State had any chances before, I feel like he's lost a huge portion of them. Void Rays now trying to come out of the double Stargate. And I mean, the Void Rays are going to be nice and maybe try and deal with the Corruptors, but no. There it is. GG gets called. PandaBearMe going to be taking the game and moving the series to a 2-1 lead in a best of 5. And a pretty close game, I would say, there for a long period of time, but I really do feel like it came down to that moment where State said, I'm going to take the forward expansion because I have the stronger army in a direct engagement. If I am able to defend this position, it's less mobile because of the disruptors. They move fairly slowly. Blinkstalkers are nice and everything, but for the most part, State wanted to stay in one position compared to Speed Zerglings. And PandaBearMe said, Broodlords. Broodlords, I'm going to punish you for taking that forward 4th expansion. I'm going to end this game like that. And it worked out quite well for him. So now we move on to game number 4. State is inviting me into, I guess, the wrong lobby? I don't even know. These players keep making the games and leaving them, and I'm like, what? Was it on the wrong server? Was it the wrong map? I don't even know. All right, taking a look at, oh, actually, no, I have not gone to a break for a while. So I'm going to go to a quick break before we get started in the next game. So we'll see you guys in a little bit. I haven't played a break or gone to a break for like almost an hour now, so. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we are in game number 4. And I was taking a look at the bracket. The bracket says that this was a qualifying match, but the admin before we started said that it was top 4 are going to move on to the final stage. So we'll find out in a little bit. This could very well be one of the qualifying matches to make it to the final stage, not qualifying for DreamHack Montreal. But regardless, game number 4, we are starting down here in the bottom left-hand corner of the map. The red Protoss player, give it up for State. And his opponent spawning up here in the top right-hand corner of the map, the yellow Zerg player from Rude Gaming, and setting up 2-1. It's PandaBearMe. State is going for his expansion, thank God. I was a little bit worried. I'm gonna have to ask State about it later, because I feel like State is one of those players that is 50 million times more intelligent than I am in StarCraft. Let's just be real. He's a Grandmaster level player, knows his stuff, so he's going for, in some of those other games, he's going for these really late natural expansion Nexus, and he never really seems to be able to get the damage done that he needs to. But there must be a specific situation against a particular build order or something along those lines that type of style works exceptionally well against. Maybe he's looking for like a 3 hatch before pool opening or something, but PandaBearMe has been opening it up straight and clean, just going for hatch gas pool every single time, going for the eventual 3rd expansion, not playing it out too greedy. And I like this. We already have the walling in over here from State, making sure that there is not going to be an opportunity for these Zergans to get to do the nice little wrap around and avoid this kind of choke point. And using the Stargate over here, that's really smart, because it's going to be slightly more vulnerable, you could argue, in some ways, and obviously it's going to get scattered out very, very quickly. But at the same time, if you don't throw down a Stargate over here, you're either A, going to have to build another gateway earlier on to defend this, or B, you don't get that up in time for the Zerglings, and the Zerglings manage to finish up speed and start making their way into the main base and the natural expansion, causing all sorts of problems. State is also going really spread out on his pylon coverage. You can see there's not a single pylon in his main base. That's really important to know, because imagine if the Zerglings did manage to make their way in the main base. There'd be no fletch and overcharge. He'd be running around with the depths. It'd be absolute hell to deal with. But State, of course, even have these pylons over here. He knows, hey, you're working on my backdoor rocks now. Get out of there. Moshikor says no. And these Phoenix are going to be able to move around, taking out any of the Overlords. And there is one Overlord over here sitting pretty close to the third expansion. State taking a very fast third expansion. I really like this, especially on this map. But what is PandaBearMe going to be up to? He's grabbing his own lair tech. He's getting up an evolution chamber. And is just grabbing his second gas geyser. So this is just only his second gas geyser. Only has one in the main base. But yeah, with lair tech coming up, this looks like it's going to be a fairly straightforward, macro-oriented game for the meanwhile. And I wouldn't be at all... Okay, I'm fairly... I was going to say, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see this go into that same melee upgrade style that we were talking about before. And there it is, the melee upgrade coming up. But man, this Overlord is such a value Overlord. It makes it way in the main base. And granted, it's not going to scout anything of note in the main base. But State doesn't seem to notice it. And he's probably going to be busy microing these Phoenix for the coming bit of time. And since I guess you just make your probes with your hotkeys, you may not even look at his main base for a while. That Overlord could be there for a while. Okay, there it is. There's the Phoenix to clean up the Overlord. But small little bits of damage done. Killing off 2 Overlords, killing off 2 drones. Nothing super massive, but fast third expansion. That's obviously going to be really nice. I also like the fact that he's keeping this Mothership Core on patrol, not just over here to deal with any Zerglings that try and take out those rocks, but he's keeping an eye on these rocks, because these are sight blockers. You do need some sort of air vision to scout out whether or not these rocks are being taken out. Zergling's going to be able to find some of these Adepts that do not have resonating glaives or anything, but they are still going to be a bit of a contender for these Zerglings that are trying to potentially get some damage done. Phoenixes are continuing to make their way around the map, trying to take out any queens that they can find around. It looks like we only have 3 queens out left on the map right now, so this other queen that looks like it's probably going to end up falling, that's going to halt some of the larva production for PandaBearMe. He is getting a 4th expansion behind this, so he should be able to play a little bit of catch up pretty soon, but State's doing a really nice job with the Phoenix harassment, I would say, so far. Has been able to keep an eye on his opponent, has been able to scout out things like the high, I say, as it turns out he hasn't moved into the main base for a while. That is interesting, because one of the big advantages of going for the Phoenix style is not just picking off queens or drones, but it's also getting an eye on your opponent and seeing exactly where they are with their tech. Killing off a couple of these Hydralisks is nice. Uh-oh. We got a little bit of lag over there. It looks like the players did not experience it, so we're going to move on. And the game just played catch-up, so normally if the game just plays catch-up, that means the players didn't see the lag and experience all of that, so they don't have anything to worry about. Lurker Den is going to be coming out, though. Of course, State knows that the Hydralisks are now coming out, so you should have some idea of the earliest possible Lurker Den when that could come out. So he is already pumping out those double Immortals, getting into that late game, getting up that oh-so-important Templar Archives that helps him out quite a bit in game number 2. On, I believe it was New Gettysburg. But the Hydralisks, both these players are just building up their armies to fairly large numbers. They both have really good economies. State is pumping out all of his gateways now to try and really pump into the late game. I do feel like it's going to come down to one big engagement that could potentially decide whether the game goes on or one player just absolutely dominates the other one, kind of like we saw in New Gettysburg. One of the Phoenix do get picked off by the Hydralisks that are on the hunt. It's very important. These Phoenix, again, it's not just for shutting down map vision. It's also for getting a scout out when that Lurker Den finishes up. State wants to know that it's finished. He wants to know what he's going to be walking into. +1 melee attacks is finished up. +2 melee attacks is on the way, whereas we don't really see +2 ground weapons being researched right now for State. Has a couple of idle gateways as well, but his researching Storm is likely as he grabs his 4th expansion. I don't anticipate he's going to be moving out that far on the map. Really? Will you move out before Storm is finished up? That is going to be such a critical component of this army. Yeah, he does back up. Just taking out a Zergling that he spotted with the Zelnaga Watchtower. And going to continue to be annoying as hell with these Phoenix, picking up whatever drones he can. And maybe even picking on an Overlord every so often. Another expansion being taken, but this has been that kind of very tense passive game. Because it sort of feels like at any moment, oh man, is my opponent going to come in with lurkers any moment? Is my opponent going to come in with that massive immortal High Templar army any moment? And it seems like that moment may finally be arriving over here for PandaBearMe. Now he has a very scary looking army, but once again, it looks a lot bigger than it is because of how many Zerglings are in the mix. And you remember game number 2. I keep bringing up game number 2 because those storms decimated the Zergling count, which is a huge deal. But this game, oh, these Zerglings are getting cornered right now. Oh, but, oh, who's cornering who? PandaBearMe says, well, if you're going to go after those Zerglings, well, I'm going to go after your 4th, so you got to move back. You're going to leave my Zerglings be, and those Zerglings can even come in for a flanking position a little bit later on. The Lurkers now shutting down and actually trapping all of these Immortals and the High Templar in one location. Zerglings coming in from the backside. At the same time, the Zerglings coming in over to the 4th expansion. Fulton Overcharge going to be the primary defense over here, and Storms going down on top of some of those Zerglings. That's all well and good, but the Lurkers still are going to be the very difficult point to break through. I think that this 4th expansion is just definitely going to end up falling. There's nothing State can really do to defend it. Wants to keep that Mother Core alive. May even just need to knock down these rocks. Yeah, he has the Immortals. He can take him out very quickly, but he needs to get into a nice position to defend his 3rd expansion more than anything else. Oh boy, PandaBearMe is just getting situated in too good of a position. He can segment off a couple of these Zerglings over to the natural expansion, send some off into the main base. The robotics facilities that were producing the Immortals are going to get taken out, and there's no disruptors in the mix over here. And yeah, some good storms coming out, but how do you deal with this many lurkers? I don't even know if State has an observer. State doesn't have an observer. State doesn't have detection. He's making an oracle right now from that Stargate that's over there, but they're going to be coming in from the backside. They may even have to run over some of these Hydralisks, and God forbid he doesn't actually get every single lurker with the Revelations. 2 of the lurkers do manage to escape the Revelation, but I feel like State has just lost so many units in the meanwhile on top of that 4th expansion. And behind this, guess what? There's a Warp Prism that has done absolutely nothing. Even if he did warp in, the Spine Crawlers are over there. PandaBearMe loses an army, but he trades out for an economy, and that is the most important thing to take away from this. PandaBearMe can replace that army. State cannot. After losing that 4th expansion, after losing all of his one of his gas geysers, he's sitting on just what? 5 gas geysers? Barely even 5 gas geysers, as we have 450 gas left on these main base gas geysers. You can even see State is just struggling to figure out what to do. Has Chronoboost still going down on the idle Templar archives? If that was going down on probes, he could replenish his probe count. If he had it going down on a gateway, maybe he could try and spend some of the gas that he has on Archons, or maybe warp in some more Zealots, but he's got to just make do with whatever he's got. Greater Spire is on the way, and that will definitely be the nail in the coffin if State is not able to make the push-in happen before that finishes. There's still a decent number of lurkers out, but not as high as they were before. Can State make some miracle engagement happen? He's being pulled back as, oh man, he doesn't even have any High Templars left over. I guess 2 High Templars in the mix? 1 and 2, yeah. Just 2 High Templars. They only have enough energy for 1 storm amongst them. They're gonna have enough for 2 pretty soon, but Zerglings make their way in the main base. A single warp-in of Zealots. I mean, they do 2-shot the Zerglings, as these Zerglings only have +1 Carapace research. So that's going for him, as well as Charge now finished up. But he just gives PandaBearMe so much time. I almost question if it would have been better to rely on warp-ins to deal with that Zergling harassment and just go. 1 Archon immediately getting picked off, doing absolutely nothing. You have to remember, State is on his final lifeline. This is a best of 5, and we are in game number 4 with PandaBearMe sitting up 2-1. This is a single elimination bracket. PandaBearMe knows it. He knows that he doesn't have to engage into State. He just says, well, yeah, I'll siege up some of my lurkers. What are you gonna do? Engage up the ramp? Look at how much damage these lurkers are taking just engaging versus a handful of the lurkers. These Zealots get absolutely obliterated. GG gets called. PandaBearMe advances on to the next round, which may or may not be an already qualified spot. We're gonna ask an admin and find out. Big congratulations to PandaBearMe, taking the 3-1 victory over an opponent as solid as State. One of the members of North America that's training in Korea, and definitely has the really good practice opportunities that come with training in Korea. PandaBearMe has been an absolute tear as of late, and of course it's definitely showing in his play. And with some pretty interesting playstyle, going for all those melee upgrades, despite going for the Roach, Ravager, Hydrals, Lurker composition. I shouldn't even include Ravager in that. He doesn't really get Ravagers. But going for the Roach, Hydra, Lurker composition. Alright, so let me confirm with an admin if that was a qualifying match. Hey, was that... is the round 4... qualifying match. So I'm going to ask him that. We are going to hop to a short little break while we figure this out and also find the next game. So you guys are watching the BaseTradeTV coverage of the WCS North American server qualifiers. We'll be back in a little bit. Stay tuned.